Commander Zixtal's crystalline appendages shimmered with barely contained frustration as they reviewed the latest failure statistics on their holoscreen. Another 3 elite warriors, representing the best of their respective species, had just withdrawn from the Galactic Defense Force's Advanced Planetary Assault Course. Their vital signs showed the typical patterns: elevated stress hormones, systemic shock, and the particular neural signature that indicated a complete loss of confidence in their abilities. The course stood before them through the command center's panoramic viewing wall, a sprawling masterpiece of military engineering that stretched across an entire moonscape. 17 years of collaborative design by the galaxy's finest minds had produced something unprecedented, a training ground that could break anyone. "Commander," Sub-Lieutenant Nerthy chittered from their monitoring station, "the human representative has arrived." Zixtal's crystalline structure flickered in what passed for amusement among their species. "Send them in. Let's get this over with." The door cycled open with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. The human who stepped through seemed absurdly small compared to the towering forms of the alien commanders. She wore a simple pressure suit, marked with the red dust of Mars, and bearing the patches of both the Earth Defense Force and the Martian Colonial Guard. "Lieutenant Sarah Chin," she announced, her voice carrying the slight rasp common to those raised in the thin Martian atmosphere. "Reporting as requested." Zixtal gestured to the holoscreen with 3 of their appendages. "You've reviewed the course parameters." "Yes." Sarah's eyes reflected the holographic display, numbers and specifications scrolling across her retinas through her neural interface. 4 hours is the current record attempt. 3 sections were completed before system shock forced a withdrawal. "Correct." Zixtal's color shifted to the formal patterns of official warning. "We've had 36 species attempt this course. None have completed more than 40%. We appreciate Earth's enthusiasm in joining the Galactic Defense Force, but perhaps..." "I'll do it in 1 hour." The command center fell silent. Even the ambient hum of environmental systems seemed to pause. "Impossible," Sub-Lieutenant Nerthy clicked. "The gravitational barriers alone require..." "1 hour," Sarah repeated. She stepped closer to the viewing wall, studying the course with an intensity that made several alien commanders shift uncomfortably. "Your course is impressive. 17 years of design, cutting-edge technology, challenges that push the boundaries of physics itself." She turned back to face them, and her smile carried echoes of something ancient, something that remembered crawling out of Earth's oceans and deciding to conquer a planet. "But you made one crucial mistake." Zixtal's crystals pulsed with curiosity despite their skepticism. "And that would be..." "You designed this course to push the limits of what you think is possible. But humans?" Sarah's smile widened. "We evolved on a death world. Everything that could kill us already tried. What you see as impossible barriers, we see as Tuesday morning challenges." She began running through her pre-course checks, each movement precise and practiced. "Your gravity barriers. Earth's gravity is already higher than 90% of inhabited worlds. Your radiation maze. Try growing up on Mars, where solar radiation is a constant companion. Atmospheric poison. Please, we mine in volcanic vents for fun." The alien commanders exchanged glances, their various biological and technological interfaces buzzing with rapid communications. This human wasn't just confident. She was treating their ultimate challenge like a routine exercise. "Very well," Zixtal announced, their crystalline form settling into recording configuration. "The course is yours to attempt, Lieutenant Chen. May I remind you that medical evacuation won't be necessary." Sarah sealed her helmet with a click and headed for the airlock. "One question before I start." "Yes." "After I finish this in under an hour, how many more humans do you want for your advanced training programs? Because I know about 1,000 colonists from Mars alone who'd consider this an interesting way to spend a morning." The airlock cycled, and Sarah Chen stepped out onto the course that had defeated the galaxy's finest warriors. Behind her, Alien commanders rushed to their stations, sensors primed to record what they assumed would be another brief, failed attempt. 1 hour. The time clicked down on every screen in the command center. Sarah Chen took her mark at the starting line, her posture relaxed, almost casual. The massive gravity barrier loomed ahead, its quantum-locked waves distorting the very fabric of space. Course attempt by Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Force, and Martian Colonial Guard. Commencing in 5, 4, 3. She bounced lightly on her toes, looking for all the world like someone about to take a morning jog. 2, 1. The start signal pulsed across the course. Sarah Chen didn't just step forward. She exploded into motion, accelerating toward the gravity barrier at a speed that made the alien commander's tracking systems stutter in disbelief. The galaxy was about to learn why humans smiled when someone said, "Impossible." The command center's atmosphere crackled with tension as Sarah Chen hit the gravity barrier at full sprint. The quantum-locked waves of distorted space-time shimmered like a wall of liquid metal, the same barrier that had shattered bones and crushed spirits of the galaxy's elite warriors. "Impossible velocity," muttered Sub-Lieutenant Nerthi, their chitinous appendages clicking rapidly across their sensor array. "She's approaching the barrier at..." That can't be right. Commander Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with alarm patterns. She needs to decelerate. The gravitational shear will. Sarah didn't slow down. If anything, she accelerated. The impact should have been catastrophic. The barrier was designed to create a progressive gravitational gradient, multiplying from standard gravity to 50 times that force over a mere 3 meters. It was meant to force careful, strategic navigation, a test of both physical endurance and tactical thinking. Instead, the assembled commanders watched in stunned silence as Sarah Chen did the unthinkable. She used the gradient as a weapon. Her first step into the field bent space around her boot. The second step compressed reality itself. By the third step, she was running through forces that should have reduced her to atoms. Her suit's telemetry streamed across the command center screens, telling a story that defied their understanding of physics. Her bone density, one of the medical officers reported, their tentacles writhing in agitation. "It's adapting. Real-time structural reinforcement at the molecular level." "Impossible," Zixtal whispered, but the data didn't lie. Sarah's voice crackled through the comm, strained but amused. "You know what's funny? This is actually lighter than the gravity chambers we use for endurance training on Mars." A junior commander's environmental suit began venting excess heat as their processing cores struggled to compute the implications. "The human training facilities exceed our maximum testing parameters." "Had to," Sarah replied, her words punctuated by controlled breathing as she pushed deeper into the gradient. "Mars is already low-grav compared to Earth. We had to compensate somehow." The gravity peaked at the barrier's center, a point where even light seemed to struggle. Previous attempts had ended here, in a zone where decision-making became nearly impossible under the crushing pressure. Sarah Chen turned it into a launching pad. She dropped into a crouch that compressed the very ground beneath her feet, then exploded upward. The gathered momentum from her run, combined with the precise timing of her jump, created something the course designers had never anticipated, a gravity slingshot. "By the first stars," Nerthi clicked, "she's using our own safety protocols against us." They were right. The barrier's emergency systems, designed to prevent catastrophic gravitational collapse, kicked in exactly as Sarah had calculated. The resulting energy discharge catapulted her through the remaining gradient and out the other side. Her velocity barely diminished. The entire sequence had taken less than 30 seconds. "Status report," Zixtal demanded, their crystalline form flickering through patterns of disbelief. "All systems functioning within parameters," the technical officer reported. "The barrier. She didn't break it or bypass it. She just used it differently." Sarah's vital signs painted an equally confounding picture. Elevated heart rate, increased adrenaline production, and a cocktail of other biological responses, but all well within what appeared to be normal human performance metrics. Lieutenant Chen, Zixtal transmitted, trying to keep their electromagnetic emissions steady. Your approach to the barrier was unorthodox, was it? Sarah was already moving toward the next challenge, her pace unwavering. Seems pretty standard to me. When you grow up in an environment that's actively trying to kill you, you learn to make physics work for you instead of against you. The assembled commanders watched as she approached the radiation maze, their sensors still struggling to process what they'd witnessed. One of them, a veteran of 3 galactic conflicts, finally voiced what they were all thinking. We may have made a significant error in our understanding of human capabilities. Speaking of understanding, Sarah's voice came through again, now tinged with something that made several commanders' threat assessment systems ping an alarm. You might want to recalibrate your radiation sensors for what's about to happen next. I'd hate for you to think your equipment was malfunctioning. Before anyone could respond, she entered the radiation maze at the same relentless pace. The command center screens blazed with warnings as the maze's deadly energies began to surge. Commander Zixtal's crystalline form shifted to emergency broadcast patterns. Lieutenant, the radiation levels are approaching. Oh, I know exactly what they're approaching, Sarah interrupted, and now there was no mistaking the predatory edge in her voice. Question is, do you know what happens when you give a Martian colonist this much raw energy to play with? The maze lit up like a newborn star, and the galaxy's definition of impossible prepared to shift once again. The radiation maze blazed with lethal energy, its crystalline walls channeling enough radiation to sterilize a small moon. The alien commanders watched their instruments with growing disbelief as Sarah Chen didn't just survive in this deadly environment. She thrived. These readings can't be accurate, the radiation safety officer announced, their bioluminescent patches flashing distress signals. She's deliberately triggering the high-intensity nodes. Indeed, Sarah was doing exactly that. Each step she took seemed calculated to activate the maze's deadliest features, creating a cascade of radiation that would have reduced most species to their component atoms. But for someone raised on Mars, where radiation storms were as common as Earth's rain, this was familiar territory. Your radiation shielding technology is interesting. Sarah's voice crackled through the comm, distorted by the energy field surrounding her. Reminds me of our early prototypes. Before we figured out how to harness the radiation instead of just blocking it. Commander Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with urgent patterns. Lieutenant, what you're suggesting is already happening, Sarah interrupted. Watch this. She reached out and touched one of the maze's walls, her suit's sensors interfacing directly with the crystalline structure. The entire section lit up like a supernova, energy readings spiking off the commander's scales. Impossible, muttered Sub-Lieutenant Nurthy. She's reconfiguring the maze's energy distribution network. Sarah's laughter echoed through the command center. You designed this maze to be a barrier, but radiation, that's just energy looking for somewhere to go. And energy. She paused, making the subtle adjustment to her suit's field generators. Energy can be redirected. The commanders watched in stunned silence as Sarah began to dance. There was no other word for it. Each movement triggered specific radiation nodes in the maze, creating a symphony of deadly energy that she conducted like a master musician. The radiation didn't flow around her. It flowed through her, amplified by her suit's systems and her own radiation-adapted biology. Human physiology reports incoming, announced the medical officer, their tentacles writhing in confusion. Her cells are. They're using the radiation to enhance their function. Some kind of evolved repair mechanism. Standard Martian adaptation, Sarah explained, her voice now carrying the slight harmonic distortion characteristic of someone surfing the edge of a radiation wave. When your environment constantly tries to rewrite your DNA, you either learn to use that process or you die. We chose to use it. The maze's energy patterns shifted again, forming a visible tunnel of pure radiation that seemed to defy several fundamental laws of physics. Sarah stepped into it without hesitation. "Lieutenant," Zixtal transmitted, their tone carrying both awe and horror, "are you aware that you're currently experiencing radiation levels equivalent to being inside a solar flare?" "Am I?" Sarah sounded genuinely surprised. "Feels more like a light sunbath on Mars during storm season. Though I suppose that's pretty much the same thing, isn't it?" She continued her careful manipulation of the maze's energy fields, each movement precise and purposeful. The radiation wasn't just flowing around her anymore. She was actively shaping it, using the deadly energy as a tool to carve her path through the maze. "Remarkable," whispered one of the senior scientists. "She's not treating radiation as a hazard to be avoided. She's treating it as a resource," Sarah finished for them. "Everything's a resource if you understand it well enough, even death." The maze's final section presented a solid wall of pure radiation, designed to force participants to find an alternate route. Sarah studied it for precisely 2 seconds before smiling behind her helmet. "You know what the problem is with most species?" she asked, making a final adjustment to her suit's systems. "They see radiation and think danger. Humans, we see radiation and think free energy. Watch this." What happened next would require 17 new papers in quantum physics to properly explain. Sarah didn't just pass through the radiation wall. She converted it into propulsion, using the deadly energy to launch herself through the maze's final corridor at speeds that made the tracking system stutter. She emerged from the other side trailing wisps of ionized particles, her suit's energy reserves now reading at 300% capacity. "Thanks for the power-up," she transmitted cheerfully. "My suit's batteries haven't been this charged since the last solar storm on Mars. Though you might want to reconsider your maze's design. It's a bit wasteful, just letting all that good energy dissipate like that." The alien commanders stared at their readouts, then at each other, then back at their readouts. Sarah Chen hadn't just completed their radiation maze. She'd used it as a charging station. "Time check," she asked, already jogging toward the next challenge. 17 minutes, 43 seconds, Nirthi replied automatically, their voice carrying the stunned quality of someone witnessing the impossible become routine. "Perfect," Sarah said. "Right on schedule. Now about that zero-gravity combat chamber coming up. You did remember to anchor all the drones properly, right? Because I'd hate to have to improvise with loose equipment." The commanders looked at their course diagrams with growing dread. The drones weren't anchored. They had never needed to be, until now. Sarah Chen was about to rewrite the laws of physics. Again, the zero-gravity combat chamber hung before Sarah like a massive soap bubble, its transparent walls containing a perfect vacuum filled with combat drones. Standard procedure called for careful navigation, strategic planning, and a minimum completion time of 30 minutes. Sarah took exactly 3 seconds to assess the situation before launching herself straight into the heart of the swarm. Full drone activation. Commander Zixtal ordered, their crystalline form pulsing with alarm patterns, combat protocols at maximum. The chamber erupted into chaos as hundreds of combat drones sprang to life, their targeting systems locking onto the single human figure now floating in their midst. Each drone was a masterpiece of military engineering, capable of analyzing and countering any known combat style in the galaxy. Any known combat style. Sarah Chen had other ideas. "You know what's fascinating about growing up on Mars?" she transmitted, her voice calm despite performing a complex series of maneuvers that had several drones crashing into each other. "You learn to think in 3 dimensions from day one. When your playground is a dome and gravity's more of a suggestion than a law, normal rules don't apply." She demonstrated this philosophy by using one drone as a springboard to launch herself toward a cluster of others, her movements precise despite the zero-gravity environment. The drone's targeting systems struggled to predict her trajectory, because she wasn't following any trajectory they could recognize. "Their targeting algorithms are failing," reported Sub-Lieutenant Nirthi, their chitinous appendages clicking rapidly across their console. "They can't establish a pattern because there isn't one." Sarah's laughter echoed through the command center. Pattern. Of course there isn't a pattern. Patterns get you killed on a death world. You want to survive. You learn to be unpredictable. She proved this by suddenly reversing her momentum using nothing but the compressed air from her suit's environmental systems, a technique that had several engineering officers making urgent notes about human resourcefulness. "Look at their formation," one of the tactical officers observed, their compound eyes spinning in fascination. "The drones are trying to establish a standard containment grid, but she's playing pinball." Sarah finished, using the momentum from one drone collision to ricochet toward another group. "Though I have to say, these drones are pretty well built. The ones we use for Martian Zero training usually break after the first few impacts." The alien commanders exchanged alarmed glances. These were military-grade combat drones, designed to withstand battlefield conditions. The idea that humans used similar devices for training and regularly broke them added another layer to their growing understanding of human capabilities. 27 drones disabled," announced the combat systems officer. "No, 33. No, 40. How is she doing this?" The answer became clear as they watched Sarah create what could only be described as a cascade failure. She wasn't just fighting the drones. She was using their own programming against them, forcing them to predict each other's movements and collide in increasingly spectacular ways. "It's basic physics," Sarah explained, almost sounding apologetic as she used 2 colliding drones as improvised shields against a third. "Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You just have to make sure the reaction works in your favor." The chamber had become a symphony of controlled chaos, with Sarah conducting her orchestra of failing drones with the precision of a master strategist. Each disabled drone became a new weapon in her arsenal, either as a projectile or a temporary platform for her next move. "Tactical analysis complete," reported one of the senior officers, their bioluminescent patches glowing with excitement. "She's not following any known combat doctrine because she's creating a new one in real time, based on immediate environmental conditions and available resources." "That's just how we think," Sarah responded, using the last functional drone as a launching pad to reach the chamber's exit. "When your species evolves on a planet that's actively trying to kill you, you learn to turn everything into an advantage. Even chaos. Especially chaos." She emerged from the chamber trailing a cloud of disabled drones, her suit showing only minimal signs of stress from the encounter. The entire sequence had taken less than 10 minutes. "Time check," she asked, already oriented toward the next challenge. 22 minutes, 17 seconds. Commander Zixtel responded automatically, their crystalline form still cycling through patterns of disbelief. Sarah nodded inside her helmet. "Good. We're making excellent time. Though I should warn you about the atmospheric poison chamber coming up." "Yes," Zixtel prompted, dreading the answer. "You might want to recalibrate your toxicity sensors. Things are about to get interesting." The commanders looked at each other, then at their course diagram, then back at each other. The atmospheric poison chamber had been designed to require complex breathing apparatus and careful movement through toxic gases. Sarah Chen was about to show them why humans considered toxic to be a relative term. The atmospheric poison chamber loomed ahead, its opaque walls swirling with toxic compounds that even the most advanced environmental suits struggled to filter. The chamber represented what the Galactic Defense Force considered the ultimate test of environmental adaptation, a toxic soup of gases that could corrode both organic matter and synthetic materials. Sarah Chen took one look at it and started removing her helmet. "Lieutenant," Commander Zixtel's crystalline form flashed emergency patterns. "That chamber contains 57 different toxic compounds, including fluorine derivatives, xenon compounds, and what looks like some interesting nitrogen-sulfur combinations." Sarah finished, checking her suit's readings. "Pretty creative mix. Reminds me of the vapor pits we use for mining on Venus." The command center erupted into chaos as various officers tried to process this information. Mining on Venus? The surface conditions of that death world were legendary even among spacefaring races. The idea that humans regularly worked there was concerning. "You cannot seriously intend to," Zixtal began. Sarah interrupted by completely removing her helmet, taking a deep breath of clean air, and shooting the commanders a quick grin through the viewing window. "Fun fact about Mars colonists: we start training our lungs before we can walk. When you live in a dome where any breach means death, you learn to hold your breath for a really, really long time." Before anyone could stop her, she sprinted straight into the poison chamber. "Multiple toxicity alarms triggered," shouted the environmental officer, their tentacles writhing in distress. "Atmospheric composition is barely registering on her biological monitors," finished the medical officer, their compound eyes spinning in disbelief. "Her lung capacity that can't be right. She's not even attempting to breathe." Inside the chamber, Sarah moved with the same relentless efficiency they'd seen throughout the course. But now she was doing it while holding her breath in an environment that could dissolve standard battleship hull plating. "Maintaining visual contact," reported Sub-Lieutenant Nirthi, their chitinous appendages clicking rapidly across their sensor array. "She's using the toxic compound's own density to create pathways of relatively cleaner air. The temperature differentials from her movement are actually pushing the worst concentrations away from her." Sarah's voice came through their comms, transmitted directly through her suit's backup systems. "It's basic fluid dynamics. These gases have different densities. Move fast enough, create the right pressure waves, and you can surf between the layers. We used the same principle for emergency evacuations on Mars." The commanders watched in stunned silence as she navigated the deadly maze of toxic gases, her movements creating visible patterns in the swirling atmosphere. She wasn't just surviving in this lethal environment. She was using it to her advantage. "Time remaining until critical exposure," Zixtal demanded. "According to our models, she should have experienced total system failure approximately 40 seconds ago," the medical officer replied. "But her vital signs are still stable. Elevated, but stable." Sarah reached the halfway point of the chamber, where the toxic concentration was highest. Instead of slowing down, she accelerated, using the increased resistance of the denser gases to maintain her momentum. "You know what the real problem with your poison chamber is," she transmitted, her voice slightly strained but still clear. "You're thinking like spaceborne species. Out there, any exposure to the wrong atmosphere means death. But Earth tried to kill us with its atmosphere for millions of years. We adapted. We survived. We thrived." She burst through a particularly dense cloud of fluorine compounds, her suit's external sensors briefly overloading from the corrosive exposure, but her biological readings remained steady. "Fascinating," muttered one of the senior scientists. "Her cellular structure is actually processing some of the toxic elements, not just resisting them, using them." "Mars colonies," Sarah explained, now 3/4 through the chamber. "When you're building a civilization on a planet with toxic soil and constant radiation, you either learn to work with what you've got, or you die. We learned." The final section of the chamber contained the deadliest mix, a swirling vortex of compounds that could theoretically dissolve carbon bonds on contact. Sarah didn't even hesitate. She dove straight through it, using the vortex's own rotation to propel herself toward the exit. She emerged from the other side covered in rapidly evaporating residue, calmly reattaching her helmet and taking a deep breath of filtered air. 32 minutes, 45 seconds, she announced, checking her own chronometer. "Still on schedule, though you might want to consider upgrading the toxicity levels in there. Maybe add some chlorine trifluoride. Give it a bit more kick." The assembled commanders stared at their readouts, then at each other, then back at their readouts. Sarah Chen hadn't just survived their poison chamber. She critiqued it, like a food critic suggesting a dash more salt. "The psychological warfare section is next," Zixtal noted, their crystalline form still cycling through patterns of disbelief. Sarah's smile took on a predatory edge. Oh, good. I was wondering when we'd get to the fun part. The commanders exchanged worried glances. If she considered everything up to this point routine, what exactly did humans consider fun? They were about to find out. The psychological warfare section of the course looked deceptively simple, a long corridor with smooth, featureless walls. But appearances were deceiving. Within those walls lurked the most advanced neural interference technology in the galaxy, designed to break even the strongest minds. Initiating psychological protocols, announced the neural systems officer, their cybernetic interfaces glowing softly. Standard progression of fear responses, starting with Level 1 environmental. Sarah's laughter cut through their announcement, a sound that made several commanders' threat assessment systems ping in alarm. Fear responses. She shook her head, still moving forward at her relentless pace. Let me tell you about fear, real fear. The kind you live with when your entire civilization exists behind walls that could crack at any moment. The corridor's systems activated, projecting its first level of horror, environmental collapse. The walls seemed to crack, the ceiling appeared to buckle, and emergency alarms blared through the enclosed space. Sarah didn't even break stride. Interesting choice, she transmitted, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Reminds me of my first dome breach drill. I was 4 years old. You know what Martian parents tell their children about dome breaches? They tell them the truth, that death is always one crack away, and that's why we have to be stronger than our fears. The system escalated, moving to Level 2, isolation and abandonment. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, communications went dead, and the lighting dimmed to create a sense of absolute solitude. Sarah actually laughed again. Isolation. I spent my first solo maintenance shift at age 12, working the outer dome arrays during a dust storm. 16 hours alone in a suit, knowing that one mistake meant death. We don't fear isolation. We master it. Her neural patterns are unusual, reported the medical officer, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with confusion. The fear responses are registering, but they're being immediately converted into something else. Fuel, Sarah explained, now halfway through the corridor. Every emotion is energy. Fear is just adrenaline looking for a purpose. And humans, we're really good at finding purposes for our chemistry. The system ramped up to Level 3, existential horror. The walls rippled with impossible geometries, reality itself seemed to bend, and the very concept of existence became questionable. Sarah's vital signs spiked, but not with fear, with excitement. Now this is interesting, she exclaimed, her voice carrying the same tone a food critic might use for a particularly novel dish. The quantum uncertainty fields are a nice touch, though you might want to adjust the phase variance. It's a bit predictable if you've spent time around quantum engineering labs. Commander Zixtel's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. You've experienced similar conditions before. Mars University, Advanced Quantum Mechanics, Sarah replied, navigating through a particularly twisted section of unreality. Our final exam involved maintaining mathematical proofs, while the lab space itself tried to rewrite probability. Good times. The system initiated its final level, personal horror. It reached into Sarah's mind, trying to find her deepest fears, her most primal terrors. What it found there made the system itself pause. Fascinating, Sarah commented, studying the images now swirling around her. You're trying to show me my worst fears, right? But here's the thing about growing up on a death world, then choosing to live in a colony where death is always one equipment failure away. You learn to make friends with your fears. They become tools, allies. The corridor's systems struggle to process this approach. It was designed to break minds by exposing their deepest terrors. But Sarah Chen's mind didn't work that way. Each fear it uncovered was already categorized, analyzed, and reproposed. Error in primary neural interface, reported the systems officer. The subject is teaching the system new fear responses. Sarah finished, now nearing the corridor's end. Sorry about that. Side effect of human pattern recognition. We can't help but try to improve things, even things trying to terrify us. She emerged from the psychological warfare section exactly 42 minutes into her run, her vital signs showing the kind of elevated patterns normally associated with an engaging workout. That was genuinely interesting, she commented, stretching her shoulders as she walked. Though if you want real psychological challenges, you should visit the Mars Colony Training Center. Nothing quite like simulating a total environmental failure while solving complex engineering problems in multiple gravity fields. The commanders stared at their readouts, then at Sarah, then at each other. They had just witnessed something unprecedented. A subject who didn't just resist psychological warfare, but actively engaged with it, analyzed it, and suggested improvements. The quantum uncertainty field is next, Zixtal noted, their tone carrying a mix of resignation and anticipation. Sarah's smile widened. Excellent. I've been looking forward to this part. After all, if there's one thing humans understand, it's how to dance with uncertainty. The commanders could only watch as she moved toward the final challenge, wondering what impossible thing they were about to witness next. Because at this point, one thing was becoming very clear. For humans from Earth, the impossible was just another word for not tried hard enough yet. The quantum uncertainty field shimmered before Sarah like a soap bubble made of fractured reality. Inside its bounds, the normal rules of physics became more like polite suggestions. Probability itself twisted and folded, creating a space where multiple realities existed simultaneously. Final challenge protocols engaging, announced the quantum systems officer, their cybernetic interfaces pulsing with complex calculations. Standard warning. This section has never been successfully. Question. Sarah interrupted, already checking her suit's quantum shielding. Your field generators. They're using standard Heisenberg compensators, right? The command center fell silent. How do you know about Heisenberg compensators? Commander Zixtal demanded, their crystalline form cycling through patterns of shock. Sarah shrugged. We use them in our coffee makers. Your coffee makers? Well, yeah. How else do you think we get the quantum foam just right? Regular brewing methods just don't cut it when you're dealing with Martian morning blend. She paused at the field's entrance, studying the reality distortions with professional interest. Though these look like the Mark III models, we upgraded to Mark V's last year. Much better probability distribution. Before anyone could process the implications of humans using advanced quantum technology for beverage preparation, Sarah stepped into the field. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Multiple reality branches detected, shouted the monitoring officer. She's existing in 7 different probability streams simultaneously. 8, actually. Sarah's voice came through, distorted through several layers of quantum uncertainty. Though this one where I'm briefly a butterfly is pretty interesting. Nice touch with the chaos theory references. The commanders watched in amazement as Sarah navigated through the quantum maze, her movements precise despite the fact that space and time themselves were more guidelines than rules in this environment. She wasn't just surviving in the quantum flux, she was manipulating it. Her quantum state is stable. The science officer's tentacles writhed in confusion. That's not possible. No one can maintain quantum coherence at these levels. Depends on your definition of stable, Sarah replied, her voice echoing from several potential futures simultaneously. Fun fact about growing up around quantum engineering labs, you learn to think in probabilities. Everything's possible. Some things are just more likely than others. The trick is convincing reality to favor your preferred outcome. She demonstrated this philosophy by deliberately collapsing several quantum states, using the released energy to propel herself through particularly dense probability clouds. It was like watching someone surf on waves of possibility itself. Remarkable adaptation, muttered one of the senior scientists. She's using the uncertainty principle as a propulsion system. It's basic quantum dynamics, Sarah explained, though which version of her was speaking wasn't entirely clear. Every observation collapses a probability wave. The real question is, what do you do with all that collapsed probability? The answer, apparently, was to use it as a weapon against uncertainty itself. Sarah began collapsing quantum states in a precise pattern, creating a cascade of reality adjustments that rippled through the field like dominoes falling through dimensions. Warning, announced the system AI, field stability approaching critical. Don't worry, all versions of Sarah said simultaneously, I know exactly what I'm doing. Watch this. What happened next would require several new branches of physics to properly explain. Sarah didn't just navigate through the quantum uncertainty. She conducted it like a symphony, each collapsed probability adding to a growing wave of coherence that should have been impossible. She's harmonizing with the field, the quantum systems officer realized, their cybernetic eyes widening, creating a stable path through pure probability manipulation. Standard technique for Martian quantum engineers, Sarah explained, now surfing the wave of collapsed possibilities toward the exit. When you're dealing with systems that can exist in multiple states simultaneously, you learn to make all those states work for you. It's like quantum multitasking. The field's monitoring systems were registering patterns they had never been programmed to expect. Sarah wasn't just passing through the quantum uncertainty. She was rewriting its fundamental rules, creating order from chaos through sheer force of will and applied physics. 53 minutes, 17 seconds, she announced, emerging from the field trailing wisps of quantum probability. Still well within the hour target. Though you might want to tune up those field generators, they're losing coherence in the higher probability bands. The assembled commanders stared at their instruments, then at Sarah, then at each other. They had just witnessed someone treat one of the most sophisticated quantum devices in the galaxy like a slightly miscalibrated training simulator. Final approach to finish line, Zixtal noted, their voice carrying a mix of awe and resignation. Though at this point, I hardly see how. Sarah's smile stopped them mid-sentence. Oh, don't worry. I've saved something special for the final. After all, she checked her suit's systems one last time. What's the point of rewriting reality if you don't end with a flourish? The commanders exchanged worried glances. After everything they'd seen, the idea that Sarah Chen had been holding something back was concerning. Very concerning indeed. The final stretch of the course lay before Sarah Chen, a seemingly simple straight path to the finish line. But in the Galactic Defense Force's ultimate testing ground, nothing was ever simple. Final section defensive measures online, announced Sub-Lieutenant Nerthy, their chitinous appendages moving across their console with practiced precision. All remaining systems activated. All of them. Commander Zixtal's crystalline form pulsed with concern. That wasn't in the original protocols. Oh, good, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying that now familiar tone of anticipation that made several commanders' threat assessment systems ping in alarm. I was hoping you'd do that. The course responded by throwing everything it had left at her. Gravity waves rippled through space, temporal distortions warped the fabric of reality, and quantum anomalies sparked like lightning across the final stretch. It was a symphony of chaos, a last desperate attempt by the galaxy's finest military minds to present an actual challenge to this human who had redefined impossible. Sarah Chen started laughing. You know what's really fascinating? She transmitted, her voice clear despite the mayhem surrounding her. Everything you've built here, every challenge, every barrier, every impossible task, it's all based on what you think are the fundamental limits of reality. But humans, we grew up on a planet that taught us there are no fundamental limits. There are only obstacles we haven't figured out how to use yet. She demonstrated this philosophy by diving straight into the heart of the chaos, the gravity waves that should have torn her apart. She surfed them like a cosmic wave rider. The temporal distortions meant to trap her in probability loops. She used them to create her own time dilation effects, effectively giving herself more seconds per second. Time remaining. 3 minutes. 42 seconds, reported the chronometer officer, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with excitement. Perfect, Sarah replied, now moving through the chaos with the kind of precision that made advanced targeting computers look clumsy. Just enough time for the final. What happened next would require a complete revision of several military training manuals. Sarah Chen didn't just overcome the final challenges, she combined them. Each obstacle became a component in what could only be described as a cascade of controlled impossibility. She's channeling the gravity waves through the temporal distortions, gasped one of the senior scientists, their compound eyes spinning in disbelief. Creating a probability accelerator, Sarah finished, her voice now carrying harmonics from several adjacent timelines. Basic principle of quantum surfing. Why fight individual waves when you can create your own tsunami? The cascade effect built upon itself, each conquered challenge adding to the growing wave of pure possibility that Sarah was somehow controlling. The course's final defenses, designed to be insurmountable individually, became parts of a greater whole under her guidance. 58 minutes, 20 seconds, called out Nerthy. Sarah nodded inside her helmet. Time for the finishing touch. She released her hold on the carefully constructed cascade of forces, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of letting them dissipate, she focused them into a single point: herself. The resulting implosion of probability and power should have been catastrophic. Instead, it was beautiful. Sarah Chen crossed the finish line at exactly 58 minutes and 43 seconds, riding a wave of collapsed probability and controlled chaos that left traces of quantum fire in her wake. She came to a perfect stop, checked her suit's systems one last time, and turned to face the stunned commanders. "So," she said, removing her helmet and shaking out her hair as if she'd just finished a light morning jog, "did I pass?" The command center erupted into a chaos of its own. Officers rushed to verify readings, scientists demanded copies of the sensor logs, and military strategists began frantically revising their understanding of human capabilities. Commander Zixtel's crystalline form cycled through patterns that hadn't been seen since the founding of the Galactic Defense Force. "Lieutenant Chen, you haven't just passed. You've demonstrated that your course might need some upgrades," Sarah suggested helpfully. "Because I know about 1,000 other Martian colonists who'd love to help you test the improved version." The implications hit the assembled commanders like a quantum shockwave. This wasn't just one exceptional human. This was a sample of what humanity, particularly those bred in the harshest conditions, considered normal. "One question," Zixtel managed, their voice carrying the weight of revelations yet to come. "Why exactly did you volunteer for this test?" Sarah's smile carried echoes of every human who had ever looked at the impossible and decided to make it possible. Because it was there. And because humanity has a message for the galaxy. What you consider ultimate challenges, we consider basic training. Your impossible barriers. They're our morning workout. Your fundamental limits of reality. Her smile widened. Those are just suggestions waiting to be rewritten. The next day, the Galactic Defense Force received exactly 1,001 applications from Earth's colonies. Each one contained the same request. Please provide a real challenge next time. The galaxy would never be the same.